There's the whole side of the argument that the Punisher cannot work under Marvel Studios. Recently, John Bernthal was like, if I was to come back, there's a couple things that got to happen. The character's got to be dark, gritty, and brutal enough, and all that. There's been rumors about him coming back. There's all sorts of stuff that's always said about the Punisher. He's one of those characters people want to see in the MCU proper. John Bernthal, especially because he's a great actor. But there's always this constant belief, and I don't know why, it just like penetrates hard into everything MCU that violence bad. I've seen people be like, man, it's the Avengers, they don't even like to do anything to hurt anybody. I'm like, are we watching the same films? I don't know. Like, there's this Marvel kids perception because not dark or, covered in a dark filter. And I'm just like, what makes people think that every time John Bernthal talks about the MCU and the Punisher joining it, that the character can't work in the MCU proper? Have you picked up
Mm.
on anything? Is there any reason, like anything there?
No,
I,
no, because it makes it even weirder when you go back and you like the time when Daredevil was coming out,
yeah,
right? And everyone was like, "Oh yeah, it's in the MCU. Yeah, cool, 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 cool." And then like Fisk is smashing a guy's face in the
yeah.
store, right? And you see like this waterfall of blood and like brains just fall on the floor.
Hmm.
So like everyone was content then, but it's like obviously the narrative around that is changing now because people are like, oh yeah, no, they're not in the they're not canon, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
So you might find out sooner or later, but I don't know. There's at one point it was like, oh, there's never any blood. Well, we've now got blood. Like you couldn't do this, or we're now doing this. Like PG-13 is very much getting pushed in the direction people want, and it is very much going there.
It seems like that we're past the PG-13 low of 2010 to 2016, 17-ish, which was like, we got to scale back. It feels like PG-13 is coming back to where it was in the 70s and 80s to a small degree,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
they're like, guys, if this was possible back then and kids are still fine and they're watching it still, and you can promote these films, let's just do that. Because, again, you are seeing it a lot in films you wouldn't expect it in, and it's not something that I think you just kind of look at and go, yeah, that can never work. It's like the Punisher inherently, and I know people just have this perception because they've never read the Punisher that every page as you flip it, and it's him with shotguns and guns, you're blowing people apart and rocket launchers and things
Mm.
happening. In reality, Punisher does that rarely every issue. And it's more about the buildup, the crime, the mafia, the syndicates, all his supporting characters having problems, and Frank Castle being at the center of it, being like, look, guys, I just want to shoot stuff. They're like, okay, fine. Now you can shoot stuff when it gets out of hand. And then they do it, and then it's back to the story. Like,
Mm.
it's the Punisher.
And why do they do that? Because when it's constant, it's boring as crap.
Yep, exactly. And that's what Punisher Max figured out. That's why that's the run for Punisher that everybody goes to, because it's about character development and the violence goes hand in hand with it. And even if you go back and read Max, which I do every couple years, it's again, there's stories in there that he never once goes out there and he's just like, I'm looking for blood. It's like, no, there's personal stories and character development. The blood just adds to it because of who he is and the situation that calls for it, which is what makes him a little more interesting when he has to do it. So I think John Bernthal could do that version just fine. And I think if they were to bring him back, you know, you can put him into pretty much any of the more street level projects. And I think you could do the same thing they did on Netflix, and you'd be like, this works. It's fine.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
exactly the same thing. And if you go to Disney Plus right now and look at some of the stuff they have on there, you'll be like, hmm, you'd think that'd be on Hulu because there's some violence in there and, sexual content. But it's like, no, it's on Disney Plus still. It's there. It's fine.
And the stuff that's on Hulu in the States is on Disney Plus here
Yeah.
because the Star. So it's like they don't care
No.
as much as you think they do about that sort of stuff.
And
But
that's,
obviously Disney has an image,
yeah.
but like, yeah,
E-
you could take the Netflix series of Punisher and you can just cut out certain bits and you wouldn't even notice.
Mm-hmm.
Like the shot of Jigsaw's face from the end of the first season, where it's all like covered in glass when he's been ramming it into everything for 5 minutes. You ain't got to see that.
Yeah.
But everything else is fine. No.
Yep. And
Like the close up, like gore shots, like, yeah, you cut that out. That's, everything else, yeah, perfectly fine.
exactly. And, if you look back on just everything, Disney, like, they used to distribute, like, Miramax and stuff, and they still have some of those on there. And it's like,
Mm.
some of their darker imprints. So they don't care. I think it's just this, it's the perception I'm seeing. And even some of my friends fall into this. They're like, Disney kids bad. I'm like, oh, come on, get out of this mindset. It's like, no, just because
Yeah, remember, this is the company that put out an animated movie where the lead's mother gets shot in the first 5 minutes. You don't see it, but you know exactly what happens. And it scarred kids for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Scarred, that crap's traumatic.
I want,
you see someone's dad get thrown off a cliff.
I want to remind people that many kids went and saw an Avengers film where their hero Spider-Man died right in front of them, and they were shocked. Just so we're clear on that. He got literally dusted away, and the heroes are sitting there defeated in a superhero film where the heroes die. That's okay.
Yeah, people are like, oh, like you can't do certain stuff in, Remember when Loki stabbed Coulson in the back, and you saw this bloody spike come out his chest? Like, it's been right there. I mean, fair enough. They edited out the spike in the UK version, which I never noticed somehow. I was just like, okay, but even so, like that happened.
Mm-hmm.
I think people need to wait until Moon Knight.
Yep.
And then they're still gonna say it after Moon Knight. But
of course. Of course.
Wait till Moon Knight, and then you can see who's really committed to the bit.
Yeah.
And who's just saying it for the sake of saying it.
It's the contrarian popularity thing, being like, well, we like it over here, but now we don't like it because the mouse has it. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. The mouse.
That's all it is.
The mouse. So, yeah. Look, Punisher, they're gonna do something with him. He sells. The merchandise sells. The comics sell. Like, there's always stuff happening with the Punisher. I will not be shocked if it's, a couple years away, we do see him more prominent. Maybe not a Disney Plus series, because that wouldn't make sense. But we did have, months ago, the head of Hulu talking about how they greenlit the Alien show and how they're looking for more content. And they openly said, we're in a conversation with Marvel to see what we can do with live action and animation down the road. If it calls for it, if Feige doesn't want to put it on Disney Plus, they could be like, you know what? Let's just do it on Hulu and it'll be connected to it. I mean, look, they're connecting Venom to the damn MCU. So the Punisher is just a better step of darker, actual things they own that they can connect to and print money. So why wouldn't you? It's people just want to hate when it calls for it, I guess. So look, we'll get back to this whenever we hear more Punisher news.